As some of you know, I love Bruce Springsteen's music. It's a mix of rock and roll, soul, gospel, folk, and Western influences. Love it. The near 50-50 black and white split of the original lineup of the E Street Band, founded in early 1970s Asbury Park, New Jersey, seemed revolutionary. Jersey, thanks Bloom. Seemed revolutionary at the time. The fact that he's backed up his records with nearly 4-hour shows regularly, night after night, with church-like enthusiasm for 5 decades, unreal, to me at least. He's a lapsed Catholic that could never fully leave the church. I'm kind of the same. However, the thing that's the most affecting part of the boss's work for me has been the ways in which he's mixed personal minutiae and details in his songwriting with the political context that his characters live, work, and play in. This mix of the political and the personal, or in social work terms, the micro and the macro, is magical, and something that connects deeply with what I'm here to discuss with you today. So from May through December of 2019, I worked as a clinical intern at Astor Services' Partial Hospitalization Program in Poughkeepsie, New York. Astor Services is a phenomenal nonprofit organization that engages with the local community to provide mental, emotional, and behavioral health services to children and their families. Their work spreads from the Bronx all the way up to Ulster County, just across the river. Their Partial Hospitalization Program, or PHP as I'll call it, works to serve adolescents who are in acute, high-risk situations. For the most part, the clients we would work with there were working against challenges such as suicidal thoughts and attempts, homicidal thoughts and attempts, substance abuse, and school and social avoidance. Every day, they were facing deep-seated challenges brought on by chemical imbalances, difficult living situations, and other adverse childhood experiences, what the CDC calls ACEs, such as trauma and abuse. Now, as a cisgendered, heterosexual, white, college-educated, middle-class male who was brought up in a Christian household, I must address the power I had in every single situation that I experienced at Astor. Every single one. Many of our clients and their families were members of what power dynamic theorists call target identities. That is, groups who have been historically discriminated against in our country. People of color, members of the LGBTQ+ community, women, non-Christians, those living under the poverty line, and those with physical or mental differences, just to name a few. In these exchanges, I had power and I had privilege because of every single one of those agent identities I just listed. I also had power because of my position. I was the helper in this case. Therefore, I had an assumed level of knowledge, education, and access to resources. And I was the person that could either access or stand in the way of those resources for our clients. I bring this up to directly challenge each of us. In some way, everyone in here has a power or a privilege, especially all of us white males in the room today. And so my offer today is to address that privilege, process that privilege, and then use that privilege to be an ally in some way through your actions for folks that don't share that same privilege. So this brings me to the central conceit of my talk today. As I spent more time at PHP, I couldn't help but have Bruce lyrics pop into my head when I was faced with certain theoretical ideas, real-life situations, and frustrating or joyful interactions with both individual humans and the larger systems in which we all live our lives. So, 3 lessons that I learned from Astor, brought to you by lyrics from the boss. Number 1, you're born into this life paying for the sins of somebody else's past. A song called Adam Raised a Cain from Bruce's 1978 album Darkness on the Edge of Town. Rev, talk about biblical imagery, right? There's this idea of countertransference therapy, in therapy, excuse me. The idea is that the client elicits an emotional reaction from the therapist. Essentially, the therapist's buttons get pushed by something the client says or does. We go to supervision and we process this as therapists all the time. For me, I rarely ever experienced countertransference because of something a teenager did. It was almost always because of the teenager's parents. Parents are tough. Yeah? Okay. Clients whose mothers abused substances while they were pregnant with the client. Clients whose parents refused to accept their children's authentic self-identity, sexuality. Clients whose parents actively opposed the treatment that the client was trying to seek. These all push my buttons. You're born into this life paying for the sins of somebody else's past. With other cases, these sins were not committed by folks so personally close to the client. Rather, they were original sins of our country. Slavery, the creation of racist policies that perpetuate public school to prison pipelines that just make the wealthy more wealthy, and redlining of tax and school districts based on race and socioeconomic status. At PHP, we worked with individual human beings who were dealing with individual problems. However, with every single case, our clients' lives existed within a context of challenges born out of the sins of almost always someone else. Lyric and lesson number 2. It's a sad man, my friend, who's living in his own skin and can't stand the company. Every fool's got a reason for feeling sorry for himself and turning his heart to stone. Tonight, this fool's halfway to heaven and just a mile out of hell, and I feel like I'm coming home. First line first. It's a sad man, my friend, who's living in his own skin and can't stand the company. It's a powerful line to describe so much of what our society is going through currently. So many of our clients face this daily. And I think if we were to let our guard down here just a little bit, many of us on campus face moments of this feeling too. I know I do. Are we good enough? Am I pretty enough? Am I smart enough? I can't believe I just said, did, thought that thing. These are all automatic negative thoughts that many of us practice every day. If you've ever thought one of these things, congrats, you're human, right? It's part of the existence. So the challenge is just finding ways to love and accept yourself. Be patient with yourself. Cut yourself a break every so often. Now the last 2 lines. Every fool's got a reason for feeling sorry for himself and turning his heart to stone. Pretty self-explanatory. We all feel self-pity at sometimes. It's a powerful and often useless emotion. Tonight, this fool's halfway to heaven and just a mile out of hell, and I feel like I'm coming home. The track's called Better Days, and it's about how finding love and hope can change your entire perspective. Or maybe the other way around, how changing your perspective often helps you find hope or love. Not just romantic love, but familial love, humanistic love as well. There were so many days that I left PHP inspired by our clients. 12 and 13-year-olds who had faced so much trauma in their lives. They were just working through it as smiley, friendly, loving 12-year-old kids. Kids who had just weeks before watched their sibling be sexually assaulted by an adult in their family. They would ask me how my day was going. Powerful. They'd color me a picture as a thank you when they were leaving the program, even though sometimes they weren't sure if their family was going to take them back, if their foster family was going to take them back, or if they were going to end up back at school. So, lesson 2 that I learned from mostly 12-year-olds. Fill your day with as many little gestures of hope, love, and kindness as possible. They'll change your perspective and energy, and you never know who you're going to help too. Lyric in lesson number 3. I believe in the love you gave me. I believe in the faith that could save me. I believe in the hope, and I pray that someday it may raise me above these badlands. We all have our own badlands. We might not feel accepted by our friends, our colleagues, our family, our community. We might have been born into absolute challenge of a situation. We might have made a mistake that inflicted some sort of pain on someone else. We might feel less than, depressed, anxious about standing in the world, or the mark that we want to leave on it. I love Bruce because Bruce writes and sings about the beauty and joy of humankind, and how work and action born out of love can punch through the dark of doubt and divisiveness. Love, and faith, and work, and action, and human connection. And so I'll turn to one of my favorite other writers, Franciscan friar Richard Rohr, Bruce loves him too, to share the main lesson I learned from the wonderful clients and the important work being done every day at PHP. Brooks, this is the unifying theme. Action doesn't mean busyness or do-goodism. It may not even mean activism, but it does mean serious engagement with the suffering of our world, beyond just our own in-groups and our own identity groups. Rightly sought, action and contemplation, thought, will always regulate, balance, and love one another and the world. End quote. So here's the challenge I'm going to leave you with. Engage with other people's humanity every day, no matter what they look like, no matter what you assume about them, or no matter how being subject to them might make you feel. find a little human touch, and remember, nobody wins unless everybody wins. Thanks for listening.